Bruno is all around regarded as the worst Elite Four member that has ever existed in the history of the Pokemon franchise, and it's not even close. Because at least from Gen 2 onward, all Elite Four members are rocking some form of smart AI, whereas Gen 1 Bruno does not. But it doesn't end there. Fixing Bruno requires a lot more than just giving him a better AI script. The issue truly lies in his team composition. It starts off with the fact that he has two Onix, which are already just terrible Pokemon for Gen 1. Like, sure, Onix is a good first gym main, but it doesn't make sense at this point in the game. So many Pokemon have super effective moves against it, and its stats just simply don't match up to the quality of Pokemon that you would be bringing to the Elite Four. And the same is kind of true for the Hitmon's, because in Gen 1 they do not have high special, so they basically get wrecked by anything with special attacks, even if those attacks are not super effective against them. And then finally he's got the Machamp, which is supposed to be the crown jewel of all fighting type Pokemon in this generation, and it's just trash. If you're playing Pokemon Red and Blue, it's running things like Fissure, which can't even hit most Pokemon at that point, since one-hit KO moves in Gen 1 are based on speed, and you're never getting to this point in the game with something that has lower speed than this Machamp. And in Pokemon Yellow, while they took off Fissure and gave it some other moves, it's still rocking things like Leer. And Submission, the best fighting type move in Gen 1 that it can normally learn, simply misses 20% of the time, making his Machamp completely ineffective. Now, normally this can be forgiven in a normal playthrough because, hey, that's the way GameFreak made it. But currently I'm working on my ROM hack, Ultra Minimum Battles, in order to make a truly hardcore Gen 1 experience. And part of that is revamping some of these gym leaders and Elite Four members for a round 2. Basically, after you've defeated the entire game and beaten the champion, I want to make it so that players can go back and fight all of the gym leaders and Elite Four members, but with far better teams. But how would you even go about making Bruno better? This isn't one that's just as simple as giving him a better AI script, because the team is fundamentally bad. So we have to do a massive overhaul in order to actually make him decent. So I'm going to be making some massive changes to his team and movesets, as well as adjusting his AI, and then we're going to test him against 6 Pokemon to see how his team actually performs after the improvements. So will we actually manage to make Bruno halfway decent in this one, or is he destined to be trash no matter what we do because of the fighting typing? Let's get into this and find out. So first things first, of course, we need to start by setting a baseline. So we are here in a normal Pokemon Yellow. This is just normal Bruno standing right here. And we're going to test him against 6 Pokemon. A few that he should normally do well against because they're weak against the fighting typing, a few that are just kind of middle and no real advantage, and then a couple Pokemon that should completely destroy him. But let's just look at the team that we've got. So let me introduce the test team. We are coming in with Venusaur, Charizard, Blastoise, Golem, Tauros, and Alakazam. Alakazam represents that Pokemon that should always beat Bruno no matter what, because it's got the perfect typing against him and the perfect stats to exploit that typing. Then we've got Tauros and Golem, 2 Pokemon that on paper should be really bad against a fighting type gym. They should be 2 Pokemon that generally get completely destroyed here. Then we've got Blastoise to be a completely neutral case. At least against the fighting typing, Blastoise would have no type advantages, though the 2 Onix are going to skew that pretty hard. Then we've got Charizard and Venusaur, the other 2 Gen 1 starters, so Pokemon that most people would get here with in their normal challenge that are just going to resist fighting type moves, but they could be thrown off by something else on the team, especially if there's something like Ice Punch or Thunder Punch, for example. Charizard might actually fear something like Rock Slide, so they just represent a situation where, you know, if Bruno actually had a balanced team while still using fighting types, he might actually stand a chance of at least giving them some degree of challenge. Now, on top of that, all of these Pokemon are at level 50, which is a pretty standard level that you would reach Bruno at in a solo challenge without having dropped like all the rare candies or something. And we have given all of these Pokemon 0 DVs, but they have 10 of every single vitamin. So that kind of represents just a middling case. They're not going to be super overpowered versions of these Pokemon, but they're not super weak versions of these Pokemon either because they have a decent amount of stat experience. Outside of that, I have given them movesets that I think are reasonably appropriate. Venusaur, we could argue maybe Razor Leaf should be replaced with Mega Drain here. Maybe Growth could be replaced with Leech Seed, but this is a pretty standard set that I might get here with in a solo run. Not just looking at Bruno, but looking ahead at the following Elite Four members and the champion. Charizard is rocking a pretty normal set here. In Pokemon Red and Blue, it doesn't learn Fly, which is why I did not put Fly on this set. So instead, we're going to be rocking the Swords Dance, Fire Blast, Earthquake, and Hyper Beam. Blastoise coming in with a very standard set here with Surf, Blizzard, Earthquake, and Withdraw. Withdraw, of course, is for the badge boost glitch. It would be a move they would never get rid of here. And this is, again, the type of moveset that you would probably want to be using here against the Elite Four. Golem might be the only Pokemon that's on this list that couldn't actually get here at level 50 because of Lorelei before this. But it does have Rock Slide, Body Slam, Harden, and Earthquake. So again, some badge boosts. It's got 2 same type moves, and Body Slam is a very good neutral case for everything else and allows it to paralyze, so maybe it can outspeed. Tauros is rocking the all-around attack set of Blizzard, Body Slam, Earthquake, and Thunderbolt, and Alakazam is kind of just what Alakazam is. It doesn't have much of a moveset, so I'm coming in with Body Slam, Reflect, Recover, and Psychic, but in this fight, I mean, the strategy would 100% be just spam Psychic the whole way. Even with the Onix, you don't care. So let's do a quick test case here. Let's just see how each of these Pokemon performs when we put them up against Bruno in his normal form. So first attempt against Bruno with our Venusaur, we just go Razor Leaf on the Onix. It's an easy one-hit KO. Then we'll bring out the Hitmonchan. Sorry, I do not have set battle mode put in. But Hitmonchan, again, with a critical hit Razor Leaf, is a guaranteed one-hit KO because it has no special in this generation. Hitmonlee gets more of the same, completely wrecked. That brings out the second Onix, which we miss a Razor Leaf. That's the only reason he hit us. After that, we can simply knock that Pokemon out. And finally, we've got the Machamp. We go Razor Leaf. It does about half with a critical hit. Submission does basically nothing. And it's going to take 3 hits here, but honestly, it doesn't matter what we do. Venusaur completely crushes Bruno with no issues whatsoever. It's not even close to hard to get through this fight with a Venusaur. So that brings us now to Charizard. Let's see how this Pokemon would do. I mean, it's one situation where normally something like Rock Slide would be 4 times super effective. Maybe it would actually be hard against Bruno. Let's check this out. So here against Bruno with our Charizard, we're coming in with Swords Dance, Fire Blast, Earthquake, and Hyper Beam. I think the best play is to set up some Swords Dance right off the bat. He goes Screech. That's not really a big deal. And now I think we can just go Earthquake on this Onix, getting, not an easy one-hit KO. It still would take another Swords Dance here. Slam did decent damage, but it's not really an issue. We simply knocked that Pokemon out. That now brings out the Hitmonchan. I think Fire Blast is perfectly fine here. Hitmonlee as well. I mean, Earthquake's technically 100% accurate, so we can just use that to one-shot. Onix comes out next and gets completely destroyed, and that brings us to the Machamp. I'm just going to Hyper Beam here, and that's an easy one-hit KO victory. So Bruno just never stood a chance against the Charizard. We have a completely safe setup against the first Pokemon because he doesn't have Smart AI. Like, he's only 1 in 4 to use Rock Slide, and even then, it's not like he's just going to one-shot us there with the Onix because of its low physical attack. So Charizard honestly doesn't actually fear coming into this fight. Like, maybe it could lose like once in a blue moon, but really just set up 3 Swords Dances, go into Earthquake, Hyper Beam, Fire Blast, whatever, and as long as you hit, you're going to win. So of course, next up, that brings Blastoise, and Blastoise shouldn't have any sort of advantage against a fighting type Elite Four member, but he leads off with the Onix, so we just go Surf here and completely destroy that Pokemon. Hitmonchan's out next. Surf, I think, is still the play. Oh, it barely survives, but it goes Fire Punch. Like, it has Thunder Punch on the moveset, doesn't even use it, so we get to destroy that Pokemon as well. Hitmonlee is out next. We'll just stick with the Surf. We get the one-hitter right there. That brings out Onix, who gets completely destroyed. And finally, Machamp. We're just gonna go for the Surf here. I don't think there's any need to change up our moveset. It goes Karate Chop, which does basically nothing, and then we crit and simply win. Yet again, Bruno, like, barely does any damage to this Pokemon, even though it's a neutral case. And that tells us that in most cases, he's just just not going to perform very well against most Pokemon. So I think it's time to finally give Bruno a small shot here. Let's put him up against a Pokemon that he should crush most of the time, Golem. It's weak to ground type moves, which he has on his 2 Onix. It's weak against fighting type moves. And I mean, if Hitmonchan does use Ice Punch, it's going to be weak against that too. So in theory, this is about as good as Bruno could ever hope for in this situation. Does he even put a dent in this Pokemon though? Let's find out. So here our best play is probably to use Harden at the start of the fight while he's using Screech, but then he goes for Rock Slide, a move that just makes no sense. And sure, he can X defend here, but even when he digs, look how laughably little damage he does here. And it's because of the fact that, of course, if we just raise our defense, he can't actually hit that hard with that kind of pitiful 62 attack. So we knock out the first Pokemon. That brings out Hitmonchan, where I think we just stick with Earthquake. And thanks to Badge Boost, we outspeed here even because we had completely free setup. Hitmonlee goes down as well. Now we get to the second Onix. It never stood a chance. And we just go Earthquake on the Machamp and one-shot it. So Golem, yet again, free setup, and then we just sweep the entire team because he just doesn't even try to knock you out with his first Pokemon. So even a Pokemon that's supposed to be weak to him just completely stunts on him. But that was with the Badge Boost glitch. So let's try another Pokemon that doesn't get Badge Boosts and also is weak to fighting and see how it goes. Enter Tauros. Obviously, as a normal type Pokemon, we should in theory struggle here in this fight, but let's see how it actually works out. Now, Blizzard is probably the best play against Onix, and sure enough, it's a one-hit KO. That brings out Hitmonchan, where I think we have to go for the Body Slam. This is going to be a 2-hitter, but he just X defends, allowing us to pretty easily knock that Pokemon out. Hitmonlee's out next, and this should be the hard one. It hits the high jump kick, does massive damage, but we do survive. And then I even misclick here on the Onix using Body Slam, but we'll just knock it out with Blizzard on the next turn. This is his best chance. If he goes submission, we probably lose, but here we Body Slam, he goes Leer, we Body Slam again, he Leers again, and we simply defeat him on the first attempt. So yet again, because of this lack of smart AI, Bruno will not use a strong move against us a lot of the time. There's a decent percentage that he just goes like double team with the Hitmonlee, giving us a free turn. There's a decent chance that he just does like that and just spams Leer with the final Machamp. He's got the win in the bag and he just doesn't even try to get it. So when he asks why, how could I lose? I mean, come on, dude. Did you even study to get to the Elite Four? Like, how does a guy get to this point in life with no skills whatsoever? And then you realize that that's like, 90% of people who are on top of companies in the real world. So clearly, Bruno, the Nepo baby of Gen 1. But now let's just finish this off by showing how he performs when you have a super effective Pokemon. So of course it is Alakazam time, and here there's no strategy in this whatsoever. You just hit Psychic, and that's a one-hitter. Psychic on the Hitmonchan is also a one-hitter. Psychic on the Hitmonlee will also be a one-hitter. Psychic on the second Onix, there was never a question, and finally Machamp gets completely destroyed. So we get through with no damage taken with Alakazam. But this is the one case where destroying him completely is completely forgivable. I mean, he's supposed to be a fighting type Elite Four member, so it makes sense that the strongest typing against him, in terms not just of having super effective moves, but also matching up in terms of stats well against his Pokemon, we have the speed and special that allows us to destroy everything. That, yeah, even if we buff him a lot, he should still lose to Alakazam basically every time. Like, barring a Gen 1 miss, like, we should always win this fight with Alakazam. But what we have seen ultimately with this little challenge here is that even with our Venusaur that's now named Charizard, all of these Pokemon get through Bruno insanely easily. There was never really a question of whether or not you're going to get through. Like, even Tauros, the worst performer here, you just need him to use like 1 or 2 bad moves in the entire fight and you're good to go. And he will give you plenty of opportunities to get that. So how do we actually go about fixing Bruno? Well, let me load up a brand new game. So here is another version of Pokemon Yellow, but this has been altered quite a bit. I have the exact same team here with the exact same movesets, so there are no changes here in terms of stats, in terms of moves. We're coming in with everything exactly identical so that we can do an actual apples to apples comparison. But let's take Venusaur into this fight and just see what I have changed about Bruno's team. The first thing that we're going to see is that Bruno now leads off with a Primeape, and it's rocking the moveset Rock Slide, Body Slam, Low Kick, and Dig. 4 completely legal moves for Primeape in Generation 1, but even more importantly, this Pokemon brings a lot more speed to the table. And while its special and defense aren't great, if it does manage to land attacks, it is going to do massive damage here. On top of that, it doesn't have nearly as many type weaknesses as those Onix do, while still offering a lot of the coverage that we were getting from the Onix. Consider that Rock Slide and Dig are going to be nice coverage moves here. Low Kick allows it to flinch opponents if it does outspeed them, and Body Slam could allow it to outspeed by getting the paralysis. So if we try to go the same strategy as before, let's just go Razor Leaf on this one. It's not a one-hit KO, and now we see another change to Bruno. He is going to use a full restore on his Primeape. So now instead of just going down nice and easy, he at least will put up some degree of fight, and he even body slams us. We're still going to destroy the Primeape here, but we can see that it was definitely not as easy. That brings us to our second Pokemon, of course, which is Hitmonchan. It's rocking High Jump Kick, which is an egg move from Gen 2, Mega Punch, Ice Punch, because at least it brings the chance to freeze and is super effective against a lot of types, and Seismic Toss. So if it has no super effective moves, it will have a decent chance of just dealing 55 damage to any opponent here. Of course, it still has no special, so Razor Leaf just one-shots it. That's perfectly fine. But now we move on to Hitmonlee. Hitmonlee is rocking Metronome, a legal move that gives it at least some variety in terms of its attacking power. Mega Kick, which is its strongest normal type move. High Jump Kick, which is the strongest fighting move in the entire game, and normally the signature of Hitmonlee. And finally, we get Seismic Toss, which, yet again, if we came here with like a Gengar or something, well, not Gengar. Gengar probably just one-shots with a Psychic, but consider like maybe a Ghastly. It could be a situation where then Seismic Toss would allow it to at least deal some decent damage to that Pokemon rather than having nothing that is effective. Here, we'll just stick with the Razor Leaf, which will still knock out this Hitmonlee, but we can definitely see that the moveset is looking better. That brings us to Poliwrath, and this is the Pokemon that I honestly always thought that Bruno should have had. It gives type coverage with Surf and Blizzard. It also brings status coverage with Hypnosis. So if you were to come here with a fighting or poison type Pokemon, the Poliwrath is going to want to use Hypnosis in order to put them to sleep. But because he now has smart AI, he will not just spam Hypnosis over and over again. He will only use Hypnosis until your Pokemon is asleep, and then he will start attacking it. Here, of course, with the Venusaur, we have a type advantage with Razor Leaf, but we see we did not get the one-hit KO. It did go for Hypnosis. It didn't manage to hit, so we get through this time, but that could have led to some issues. If we got put to sleep and then it starts using Blizzard, we could actually lose here. And finally, we have the Machamp, and Machamp's moveset has been completely revamped except for Submission. Submission is there because it is the strongest fighting type move, but we have given it Earthquake, Fire Blast, and Hyper Beam. Hyper Beam because it is effectively the strongest move that this Pokemon could ever use in neutral situations. Earthquake also gives it really great coverage against poison, fire, and electric types. Fire Blast helps cover things like ice, bug, and grass. So when we try to go for Razor Leaf here, we're going to see it's not a one-hit KO, and he goes Fire Blast, dealing massive damage, and we get burned. Here, the second Razor Leaf does not knock him out. He full restores. We try to hit him again with the Razor Leaf. He misses a Fire Blast, and we manage to get the luck to get through. But we can see that if he had just landed one more Fire Blast there, we would have been dead. And he effectively had one more opportunity to use it. So Bruno goes from being an absolute cakewalk for this Venusaur to actually posing some degree of challenge. He's still beatable. We might experiment with throwing on Mega Drain instead of Razor Leaf, for example, and using Growth into Mega Drain strats. But at the end of the day, you would actually have to think a little bit about what you're doing. You can't just come in here willy-nilly. But how does this revamped team compare against the rest of our challengers? Well, let's get to Charizard and see how it does. So So when we come in with Charizard now, the first thing to note is that this Primeape, because Bruno now has Smart AI, is only going to use the move Rock Slide, which is 4 times super effective against us. If we were just a normal fire type, of course he would split between Rock Slide and Dig, but either way, he's at least using super effective moves. So I think our best play here with this Charizard is to go Fire Blast, hoping to get the one-hitter. We get a critical hit that time, so we do manage to get through. Now we get to the Hitmonchan, and because Ice is super effective against flying and Fire does not resist Ice in Gen 1, it's going to use Ice Punch here. But I think this is a decent enough spot to at least try to set up some Swords Dance, though we do have some risk here because of the fact that Ice Punch could just KO us or freeze us. We actually managed to survive 1 crit as well as 2 more Ice Punches thanks to some badge boosts. And now I'm going to Hyper Beam this Pokemon down, getting the 1-hit KO. Against Hitmonlee, it doesn't really have anything that great. It's either going to go Metronome or Mega Kick, but who knows, Metronome could get something like Surf that actually poses an issue for our Pokemon. So here we will Earthquake that Pokemon down. Poliwrath without the Swords Dance I think would be impossible here. I don't think we would one-shot, and Surf would destroy us. So fortunately we have the Swords Dance. We'll go Hyper Beam. We get the 1-hitter on that one. That brings out the final Machamp, where because of our boosted attack stat, I think we stick with Hyper Beam, and we do manage to knock it out in 1 hit. But yet again, it would have at least had Hyper Beam to use back against us if we didn't get the 1-hitter. So again, we see that Charizard gets through, but it's on very low health. So I think through the first 2 Pokemon, we can almost objectively say that we have made Bruno not just better, but way better than what he is normally. But now let's get into a neutral case. Let's see how the Blastoise does when it has normally no type weaknesses here, but also will not have anything super effective because there are no longer any Onix on the team. So first things first, of course, I thought about giving Primeape Thunderbolt, but I decided against it because I felt that with its lower special attack, in most cases, even a super effective Thunderbolt wouldn't be as effective as its normal damage dealing moves. But debate that with me down in the comments. Because we know that this Primeape is only using physical attacks though, my strategy with Blastoise is going to be to set up Withdraw at least as many times as I can, knowing of course that critical hits will ignore all of these stat boosts. Still, once we get everything set up, now we can go into Surf and I think just destroy this Primeape. Sure enough, we do. We'll stick with Surf on Hitmonchan, not giving it any chances here. Same for Hitmonlee. But now we get to Poliwrath. Blizzard and Surf are resisted here. So a water-type Pokemon, typically running these moves, would suddenly have a little bit of a wall in front of them. Fortunately, we have Earthquake to use here, but it does less than half and we get put to sleep. He Body Slams us, Body Slams again, and that's the only move he's going to use while we're asleep because it is neutrally effective. And while we do have all of these stat boosts set up, he's still doing massive damage. Here, he just Body Slams us down, and we have our first loss against Bruno. We can see that water types will no longer have a guaranteed easy victory here, even when they boost up their defense a lot. There's still a chance to lose because Poliwrath can put you to sleep. And that means that effectively Bruno is now actually putting up a fight against these neutral Pokemon. So now let's move to a Pokemon that should really struggle against Bruno. We're going to come in with our Golem. The rock ground type, I think we can already see, is going to struggle really hard here. We've got tons of Pokemon using fighting type moves, and we've got that Poliwrath that is rocking the Surf and Blizzard. 2 moves this Pokemon really doesn't want to see. We're going to have to badge boost hard in the early parts of the game and hope that the badge boost glitch is enough to get us through. Let's check in on this one. So here, of course, Bruno leads off with the Primeape. It's going to go Low Kick or Dig here, both of which are super effective moves. We kind of like Dig just because it gives us an extra turn to set up Harden. We don't like Low Kick because it could flinch us. Still, ultimately, we do manage to set up all of the Hardens here, but then a critical hit from Dig actually defeats us with the Primeape. So suddenly, we're not even getting through the first Pokemon. But let's just see, maybe if I went in more on attack, we would have been able to get this to go. So let's just try one more time with this Golem here. So here I am still going to set up a couple of Hardens, and then I'm going to go into my Earthquake here. Since it is my strongest same type move, we do manage to knock out the first Pokemon Pokemon there. That brings out Hitmonchan, which is either going to go High Jump Kick, Ice Punch, or Seismic Toss. It has 3 super effective moves, and no matter how smart AI is in Gen 1, they just randomize when they have multiple super effective moves in most cases, unless there's like a weird interaction with dual typings. But in this case, there's nothing like that. They're just going to use their super effective moves. We get Ice Punch, which is the best case scenario, but then we can see Earthquake did not one-shot. We were in a speed tie though because of the badge boost glitch, so we do get to knock it out on the next turn, but that brings out Hitmonlee, who goes for a High Jump Kick but misses. That was very lucky, allowing us to get the victory there. Now, though, we have to deal with Poliwrath. It is slower than us, and we did about half, but it tried to go for Blizzard and missed. Oh, that's what we needed. We do get to Machamp this time, at least. That was incredibly lucky, but now Machamp is only going to go for Earthquake or Submission here. We go for our own Earthquake with a critical hit, taking it to low health, but Submission ends it, and we lose. So we can see that even with insane luck there with our Golem, being able to actually dodge a Blizzard and get the 2-hit KO there on the Poliwrath, still, this is not a fight that's going to be easy. You're probably going to end up taking a Pokemon like Golem and going and grinding more levels to actually get through here. Granted, it's a Pokemon that might not have gotten through Lorelei at this level, but even still, you cannot safely just set up Harden here with a Pokemon like this. You now actually have to think about how many times to set up before you go into attack, because you might be in a really tough situation otherwise. But with that, we've gotten to the next Pokemon that is weak here, a normal type in Tauros, but Tauros does have really wide type coverage, including Thunderbolt for that Poliwrath. So it might be a situation where this is actually easier than the Golem, but let's check it out. The first major thing is that when we get here against the Primeape, we can immediately see that it's just going to use Low Kick against us. That's the only move it will use. We are fortunately faster than this Pokemon though. The question is, are we better going for a physical attacks or special attacks? In this case, Primeape's defense and special are the same, so I'm just going to go for my physical attacks with Body Slam here. This is a 2-hit KO, and we took a lot of damage from that Low Kick. We still managed to knock it out, but that was not necessarily pretty. Now when we get to Hitmonchan, we have a much tougher decision because its defense is like double its special, whilst our attack is basically like double our special as well. So I'm going to go for Blizzard here just because I think it has the best shot of getting a one-hitter. We get the crit, so we knock that one out. Hitmonlee, I'll stick with the same. We crit again. Very lucky, allowing us to get through that one. Now Poliwrath will go for Thunderbolts. It did not do nearly enough damage. That's like 40% there. And here, Blizzard is completely destroying us from the Poliwrath. So we can see that one way or the other, we're not getting through this. Poliwrath is too bulky to just rely on a non-stab Thunderbolts, and without any way to boost up in any other way, this honestly might be borderline impossible to actually beat now with a Tauros. So out of our 5 challengers now, consider that yes, Venusaur got through just fine, Charizard was able to make it go, Blastoise got beaten, Golem got beaten, Tauros got beaten. Now the only Pokemon that's left is our Alakazam. So let's just see how Alakazam performs here against Bruno. I expect this to be the only one that is just an absolute cakewalk. Against the Primeape, we're faster. We go Psychic, easy 1-hit KO. Hitmonchan, really no change. It's just going to get destroyed. Same for Hitmonlee. Now let's see how we do against Poliwrath though. It does have better special than most of these fighting type Pokemon, but still Psychic as a super effective move with a high special Psychic type is going to destroy that Pokemon. And that brings us to the final Machamp, where we just go Psychic and easily win. So yet again, that's perfectly fine. We can see that if you've got a super effective typing, you're gonna just crush Bruno, but that's basically true of all of the Elite Four members. Like this Alakazam will go into Agatha after this and completely destroy her too with Psychic. The major point that is different though is that usually when you have a type that is weak against an Elite Four member, you cannot come in at a kind of medium-ish level and actually win. If you try to go up against Lorelei with a rock type or a fire type that is at a medium-ish level, you're generally going to lose that fight. If you try to go up against Lance, where he leads off with that Gyarados with like a ground type or a rock type, you're generally going to lose. Bruno has been the only Elite Four member against whom it's basically been possible to get through with absolutely everything until this point, but we can see by adjusting his team and movesets and giving him smart AI, including the ability to use some full restores, it turns him into a really legit Elite Four member. So I'm going to keep rocking with this style a little bit. I'd love to hear your comments down below. Did I make any mistakes in my improvements on Bruno? I'd love to hear it, because in my final version of my Ultra Minimum Bottles ROM hack, there is going to be a round 2 against Bruno, and he's going to be rocking something similar to this that might actually give the player a little bit of difficulty. He's also going to have much higher levels. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But for now, this is kind of a different style content for me, so I figured I would just try it out and see. But tell me what you think down below. Is there another Elite Four member or gym leader that you think I should dive into? I'm thinking Lieutenant Surge, the Trash Man, might need a little bit of a look at. But anyway, that does it for this one. I will see you guys in the next one. Later.